we now we're live. We're streaming out to all the services, and we wait just a little bit, a couple minutes here, at which people get notified that it's live. Um, and hey, Ash, did your dad's lumberyard serve multifamily kind of projects back in the day as well?
Uh, not as much where we were. It was mostly single family remodeling. I mean, shoot, 80% of the lumber went out on some C250 or some F250 pickup trucks. We had an old Chevy flatbed that we sent job packs out on, but it was more uh, a local. It was that yard started in like 1905, right? So it was just kind of up in an area of northern Illinois and was just the local lumber yard, right? A contractor yard.
All right, perfect. We've got like 6 people in already. So you know what? Why don't we'll just get things going here. Uh, Hello, everyone. Mike Wisnefski, CEO of Materials Exchange, the digital marketplace to buy and sell lumber, um, rail cars and truckloads, anything in the commodity lumber space, and panels, plywood, OSB. This is our Friday Smart Market call. We do every Friday at noon, where we talk a little bit about what's happened in the market this week. But most importantly, we have an industry expert, a thought leader on the show. And today we've got Bruce Jones, who's joined us. And Bruce is going to give us a very interesting perspective on what a day in the life of a turnkey framer is. And he's going to shed some light on how he got to where he's sitting right now, which I had dinner with Bruce a couple weeks ago. I heard this story firsthand, and it was entertaining to say the least. So why don't we start out with Ash, if you could? Let's recap what we saw happen this week in Lumberland.
Yeah, sure, Mike. Thank you very much. This week was interesting for a lot of reasons. It was a busy market. Southern Yellow Pine had a good week. A lot of the truss facilities, panel facilities, are pulling a lot of 4-inch and MSR. It's almost impossible to find 4-inch and MSR. That's rolling over to the wides. 8-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch. I think 8-inch was up almost $70 on print. The reason for that is most mills now are going to split a lot of their 8-inch and cut it to 4-inch because it's getting $800 a thousand versus $400 a thousand. Spruce had a little bit of action, but not as much. The basis came in. When I just say that, the futures, that was a big premium, came in. So any hedgers that had wood on the ground, that unlocks that, and they have the ability to ship that out. I would say the market was pretty busy overall in most items up until Wednesday, then backed off a little bit. I think a lot of the distributors have a lot more wood than they're coming across and telling people. But again, the outtake is pretty decent. Monday on our first call, we talked a little bit about how the Southeast was pulling pine with Charles De La Torre. Tuesday, Mike talked basis with Greg Kuda. Wednesday, Brian Westbury, award-winning economist, was on our show talking about how all this M2 money going into our economy was like a rat going through a snake. And he felt that inflation was not transitory, especially in lumber prices, and that was here to stay. But he did think that the worst of this is over unless we borrow 4.5 trillion again. But we'll make that determination if that happens. Thursday, I talked about logistics and home builders. Matt Lehman was at a home building show in Austin, and he said a lot of these home builders right now are holding inventory until the last minute to sell it. One, because they can, because people are willing to pay prices, and two, they're doing that because they really want to know what their all-in cost is on items, labor, and every input cost up to the last minute so they can have profit on these homes, and that's working so far. I thought that was interesting and one thing I usually forget about. And I'm kind of looking forward to listening to Bruce talk now, so I'm gonna be quiet and sit back and be and watch from now on in.
All right, thanks, Ash. Ash highlighted the other shows we had that we have during the week. Can't recommend them enough. It's real time, up to the minute information. So I'm gonna share my screen one more time and give you guys perspective of Nick. If you could put that screen up, that'd be great. Of what is the Bruce L. Jones Contracting Company? Um, and when you take a look at this project gallery, This is a gorgeous church that they built. And then you can see some of these, massive projects for apartment complexes in some pretty tight areas. What's going on in this one, Bruce?
Well, that one there is just inner city job where we were tight using a tower crane, moving stuff up in, building an apartment with basically no space, no road surface, and getting the packs. Or that's our pre-panel wall panels, and shipping them in and putting them precisely on site where they need to be.
So obviously, logistics is key in this type of environment and
Yeah,
coordination, right?
yeah, it takes a ton of coordination because you have to ship the correct stuff at the right time, as well as coordinating with your roof and floor truss vendor to get their product in at times because you just don't have any space to put anything. So it's got to be like a well-oiled machine, and timing and controlling your trucking, and hopefully your truckers are patient when they have to wait to get in and wait in line. So we're very fortunate there. We do our own trucking, so that alleviates a lot of that hassle of having an outside vendor.
Well, you know what? This obviously is a level of sophistication that is several notches above where you started. And I think what makes a guest credible is when we hear about their humble roots and how they got to where they are. So when we had dinner, like I said the other night, it was an entertaining dinner. You kept talking about a school bus with no brakes that you
Yep.
basically started your business in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell
Basically.
me how'd that work?
Well, when we started getting into the framer, really doing framing bigger, we used to commute back and forth from Pennsylvania to Maryland, and we would fill up a school bus with guys, and we would drive an hour and a half to a compound, and then get in trucks, and then go to our job sites from there. So half the time it was an old school bus that didn't have a lot of brakes, wasn't the safest thing, but we it was the early '80s, and we went up and down the road, and that was our life. You spent 8 to 10 hours on a job site and 4 hours driving and commuting back and forth.
And having a bunch of fun along the way, I'm sure.
Back in the '80s, yes, we did. It was a good time. So, and the guys were very competitive. So you would just, a lot of the guys were on different job sites. So, and there was guys that would meet us when we got down there that worked locally. But the bulk of the team that was built and ran the jobs came with us and commuted every day with us.
So look, some things are the same. You're building with 2x4s and 2x6s in the '80s. We're still doing that today. So
Yep.
what was your path like to get to where you're at now from the '80s? Like what were some of the major steps that you saw that started to change the industry for you?
Well, when we first started, we were labor only. So we were very successful at doing that. And we started out with smaller projects, single families, went to townhouses. We worked into apartment complexes, assisted livings, hotels, restaurants, and things like that, medical centers. So that took a combination of 10 years of perfecting what you knew how to do. So we were able to do small projects as well as learning how to do larger projects. And we always took it as a challenge to be able to be more successful, that if we replaced somebody on a job, we showed up with the intent to make sure that everybody knew we were the new guys and we weren't scared of failure, and we would just come in and knock the jobs out of the ballpark. So we spent a lot of time learning our work craft up front, doing a lot of blueprint work, studying, and as computers became of age, and estimating programs, we morphed into learning how to do that. We started our own wall panel company off a mobile truck that we had in the '80s that a friend of mine designed, and I bought one, and then we would just drive around from job site to job site and build wall panels. So from the truck, ship it to the guys in the field, and then we started shipping from the job sites to other job sites. So then eventually we built our first little mom and pop wall panel shop in Hanover, Pennsylvania, and we started from there, never looked back. And we've been shipping, product all in 5 states for the last 30 years.
let's talk about that integration of offsite or your wall plant into your business.
Yes.
I think what the average person in the industry doesn't understand is how much feedback from the field it really takes to make an efficient wall panel or have an efficient wall panel operation. It's not just as simple as I'm going to set up a plant and start kicking out wall panels, right?
No, no, it's not. We got into it because we were doing, back in those days, we were doing other people's wall panels, and they would just bring them out on a big truck and they would be dumped. And the first wall you needed was always on the bottom of the stack. And we didn't have forklifts back in those days. So you had to strip the whole pile down to get what you needed. So from there, we decided, well, okay, we're going to figure out this, and we're going to make it framer friendly. So we controlled how we stacked our walls, how we built our walls, how we shipped our walls. So when the guys put it onto the job site, they weren't going all over the place with the wrong walls. They don't have to carry them 150 feet. We figured out how to use forklifts then and create special forks to be able to move the stacks around so you don't destroy them, or help use the forklift and the cranes to set your wall panels if they were really large ones. So we got more efficient, more competitive doing that. And then we started hiring our sub crews and building that base. And we would take stick framers and convert them into wall panel guys. And then all of a sudden they realized that instead of needing 15 guys, I might only need 8 guys. And we'd have them all built. They would go together. We take the time to teach everybody how to erect and do all the layout work to do it properly so the wall panels do work. We like to always think we're about 98% efficient on our wall panels when we send them out the door, because if not, there's a problem and an issue. So you have to start by working off control lines when you start something, and you got to lay it out off the panel layouts and not off of what the foundation is. So if you change it to match the foundation, then all your panels are going to be cutting and having problems. So you have to understand what you can and can't do there. So I've been very blessed over the years to have some really gifted carpenters that came up through the process with me and helped me perfect this and get better at it.
That's amazing. So tell me, where are you at today? What's Bruce Jones Contracting doing today? What's the cutting edge technology that you're using?
Well, what we're doing now is we're getting more modernized with our wall panels and stuff. Now, we used to do all our cutting with radial arm saws and stuff. We now have a new Hornet saw that does all our layout work and cuts all our parts. We used to have 4 different people doing that. That can be now done with 2 people by just loading the machine, and it's really, before we would have to be cutting a couple days in advance of our roll lines. Now with that saw, we can cut more in a day, and we don't have to be as far out, or if we're late getting the paperwork from our designers, which are all of those guys are in-house for us, to the shop. That way we're not waiting. If we're running behind, we can catch up really quick with doing that. So the saws are there. With the modernized wall lines that you have out there, Panel Plus has nice stuff out there. And with having overhead cranes inside of our building, so the guys don't have to lift them. Up until about 6 years ago, we were stacking all our walls by hand. So you would have to pull guys off one line to come over and help lift that heavy wall up on top. And we realized the guys weren't as tired as the end of the day, and we picked up a lot of lineal footage every day of wall building. In return, that helps us to make more money. So those are some of the things. There's just constantly there's more product out there that we want to do. We are in the process of designing a new state-of-the-art wall panel manufacturing facility that we're hoping to break ground on by the end of next year. That we can have something very unique that nobody else in the country has.
That's amazing, and I keep hearing this theme. You haven't come right out and said it, but it's vertical integration in the whole process, where yes, it goes from design to put in place, all under the guise of just your company.
Well, we do. We're very fortunate. We always keep a site manager, project manager on site with our sub crews. Our trucking's controlled in-house, our design's controlled in-house, our foremans are in-house. It really makes you more successful because it doesn't take a lot to get lost along the way. You do weekly staff meetings here to make sure everybody's on the same page to get everything done. And with the years of experience that our team has had, that we teach, we can adapt and make changes. In this day and age, as guys know that are turnkey framing, most of our drawings are terrible anymore. They're never 100% complete, and you got to kind of connect the dots to make sure you're building it correctly.
So, that Ashley asked the question, we talked about this just before we got on air here, integrating with the other trades, like the roof and floor truss manufacturers, of course. But you said something interesting about you're becoming kind of the linchpin in the whole design and build process with even the plumbers and the electricians. Can you expand on where you were going with that?
Yeah, in this day and age with the turnkey framer, especially on the bigger commercial, projects, there's so much work up front with, a lot of guys are working with a BIM system. You've got to have all these meetings and lay everything out on the CADs and line everything up. We got to figure out all the penetrations that have to be for the plumber, the mechanical contractor, the sprinkler, electrician for, panel boxes. So there's a lot of coordination up front with the general contractors. And what we're seeing in this day and age with the shortage of people in this industry, we are now dealing with young, inexperienced teams working as for the contractors, general contractors. And we kind of have to be the guy that helps ask more questions and helps them get answers. And then we're communicating, with all the other trades up through the process of the design process, because we kind of use the saying that we're a pain in the butt up front when you hire us. But if you do a job with us, you'll understand that pain up front saves you so much pain on the back end, because we know how to ask the right questions to the right contractors. You have to learn a ton about the submittal process is very complex anymore, and getting that done up front. And if you can get your homework done up front versus somebody that's coming out and laying it out on the site that day and then asking the question, a lot of times we're 2 or 3 months asking questions before we're on a job.
Which makes sense. I mean, what's the old adage of a carpenter measure twice, cut once?
Yeah.
It's about preparing, and it's, everybody wants to say, what are your challenges? And I know your challenge is labor across the board. Everyone's going to say that. So that's not really, to me, that's not a challenge anymore, because I think the challenge we find in our business are the unknowns day to day. And what you're saying is the turnkey framer being an integral part of the design process can eliminate a lot of these other challenges that would come up later on, and save money. Let's talk about, you said your business is not scalable, but you can ramp up to a major project, ramp down to smaller buildings, and all in between. So describe that, and then how do you do that? That's a good question.
Well, our mindset over the years, as we started doing smaller stuff, I've always felt with the company and the leaders of the company now that run the company instead of me, I just more or less advise now. We learn how to do small additions. We'll panelize them. We'll do small restaurants, medical centers. We actually have a division of the company that does fire-rated jobs, where we're out if there's a tornado come through or fire burns out, we go back out and reconstruct that. So we run a bigger gamut than some of the turnkey framers, because if we watch the market change, like right now, single-family housing, townhouses are up tremendously, and if apartments drop off or nursing homes drop off, I mean, a couple of years ago, when the economy went bad, hotels, you didn't see a new hotel anywhere. Well, now you're seeing them being built again. So you can jump back into that product, but we have a way, we keep larger crews going, and then we have a way of keeping some of our smaller crews going, so we can keep everybody employed. If not, if you're only focused on just doing single families and that dries up a little bit, what does your company do? So we run a gambit to make sure that we're always having something in our pipeline.
that makes sense. Ashley asked another, which is the perfect segue, and it's how do you manage the material spend, and how has that changed from when you started? That's the amazing thing, how it's going to have changed. Um, so you're getting involved early in the process, right? And these are, let's say it's a big multifamily project. We know the developer has the money secured up front, and they want to know what their costs are. And I'm guessing they're trying to push that price risk onto you as much as possible, right?
Oh yeah, the framers carrying the load on that. There's no doubt about it, and it's going to continue to be that way for a while. I mean, as we all know, this past year has been horrendous with the lumber market and what it's done. One thing we are seeing, if you can manage it, and it really takes down to having loyal sub vendors with you, like our trust manufacturers. Our lumber suppliers are some of the best in the industry, and they're very loyal to us, and we've all worked together for years. And you need that loyalty and relationships to get you through these tough buying times, for somebody to be honest to you. So trying to make it work and price it, we price jobs. We're not starting for 8-9 months from now. And as a turnkey framer, everybody, I want the locked in number. Well, I can't give you what today's number is because I don't know what 8 months is going to be. So, you're either getting developers to either do upfront storage money and lock in the lumber and buy the lumber and store it for a while. We work an escalation, de-escalation clause with some contractors, or if we can get the right number that we feel comfortable looking into the futures market, then we'll lock in a number and then wait to buy it. If it's 10 months out, we have one or two of those projects. We wait and then watch what the market does and pick the right time to buy some of the items, and to be able to hold a number for the client.
One of the things you said that really struck out to me is honest with you. And there's no doubt the structure of the lumber pricing and the lumber market is such that it's very opaque. It's hard to see what's going on in that market. And I think too often companies like yourselves get portrayed as trying to be greedy and buy cheap, because you don't make your money on the lumber. You're making your money on yours and slamming the panels together and putting them in a house. And from time to time you're going to make money on lumber, but that's not your goal. Your goal is to run your operation as efficiently as possible and reduce risk, right?
You would like to think that, but lumber's become the risk that we all have to take and do the volume on what you're doing. But so yes, you've got to make some money on the lumber. It's part of the process of being a turnkey framer. Most contractors want somebody the more you give them, the less contracts they write elsewhere, and they can put all their pieces into you. So it's not just lumber; it's house wraps, it's flashings, it's sealants. Hardware is a big issue, and that right now is probably those prices on hardware are running crazier than the wood right now. They're doing what wood was doing months ago.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's always changing. It's always going to be something one way or another. Labor could be the issue. We're very fortunate. We have a loyal base of contractors, and we've been able to man everything that we have to do. We have a big workload coming up in the next year, and we're a little concerned about that, but we're out recruiting and seeing what we can do to meet the needs of the company.
Well, and I can imagine that if you're recruiting people working at your company with some of this technology that's integrated into your systems, is a little more attractive. Hey guy, throw on a pair of jeans and this tool belt and let's go, drive some nails, right? So I think that you're doing the right thing in that regard.
Well, we want to attract younger people into the industry, so you've got to go in. We're figuring out ways to get into the local high schools, some of the local trade schools that are around here, and your best thing for hiring is still word of mouth. If you hire one person, he likes you, he brings a friend. So you have to be employee friendly. The employees have the upper hand on getting a job because everybody can get a job anywhere right now if they want a job.
Yep, for sure. So I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but we're coming up to the end of 2021. We got 2022 on the horizon. Did you ever think you'd be sitting here talking about the year 2022? It's pretty wild. What do you see coming up in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5, 10 years, as far as your business and industry goes?
I'm kind of glad you asked that because I've always been one. I always thought you had to have a 5-year look ahead for what you do. The last 2 years since COVID has come in has really put a stress on everybody, and nobody has a crystal ball. We anticipate things as where they go. I can speak about for the Mid-Atlantic region that I work in. Um, I think we have a tremendous amount of work in the pipeline for another year, year and a half. I think we'll have time to assess that better when we get to the middle of next year. Um, as long as the economy keeps rolling along and we don't get hit again with another pandemic, I think things will go. I think costs are going to be higher. So I think the size of homes may go a little smaller. I think apartment buildings and townhouse buildings seems like people are going to be renting places more than owning places. So I think that market, and that's the market that we target a lot of, will be very competitive and very busy. People that I know in the industry scattered around the country are all fairly busy. I mean, you're sitting back and picking jobs that you want now instead of having to take stuff. How long that happens, I like to think we got 2 years, maybe. Uh, it seems that way, but it's going to come down to supplies. I mean, as you know, this past year there was products none of us could get in lead times, and then you're scrambling and changing. You have a job awarded, and you can't. You got to tell the owner, I can't get that lumber. I can't get that sheet good. So that really pushed jobs behind. So I think there's so much work now because the pandemic pushed stuff back. Everybody wants to get it in now, and now you're dealing with the stuff that's here, and the numbers are going astronomical for the national builders. So as you see, the permits that are being applied for around the country are up all over the place on the single families in the towns. So it should be a good ride for a few years here, but we're due to see another bump in the road. I think we see
Yeah.
that within the next year.
Um, Going back to just the materials, do you see substitutions being more readily accepted now? Understanding people got caught off guard and probably had to do some substituting that you hadn't done before.
Yeah, you have to explain it to them. They either have to understand it or you can't get it. So we're more cautious moving forward as we're doing submittals and signing contracts. Some of the sheet goods, the OSB manufacturers for flooring, they're not making the cheaper products. They might an LP might only make a top-notch 350. They may not make 250 for a couple months now. So everybody's got to pay the upper price for that because they're doing that. And you have the same thing with the plywoods and the OSBs and the wall sheetings and the zips. Sometimes we can't get stuff. We build 9-foot walls, and sometimes, okay, I'm only making 8-foot right now. This is what we're running. So the manufacturers seem to be picking what is the more profitable product to run, and they're not going to shut something down and open up and run something else. They're picking and choosing because their hours are limited and their workforce is limited.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes back to information flow as well. So
Yes.
if you're able to get back to the manufacturers, here's what we're doing. This is what we need. Giving them lead time. Sometimes I look at this, buying and selling material in the spot market or the 2 to 3 week shipment. It doesn't give enough data points back to manufacturers to produce exactly what the industry really wants. And we looked like that dog chasing his tail around the whole time, right? You're always in search of something you can't get your hands on.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
we're bumping up on our 30-minute mark here. I have one last question. So what does Bruce Jones see out there in the world that nobody else sees? Like what are you kind of on an island by yourself on? You go to your cocktail parties and you say something and everybody thinks you're crazy. Well, they probably think you're crazy no matter what, but
Yeah, well, that's true. I'm a construction worker. That's what happened. I still believe you do what you tell people you're going to do in this industry. You pull off the jobs you do, and treat your people fairly. And I think you have to be employee friendly to your people, and develop your relationships is very important. Not only with your general contractor, your site guys that you have to work with your team, and education. Staying involved with podcasts like this, and just staying in tune with what's happening in the market. You've got to know what's coming before it comes, or have a feel for it. And it's just a sense that, you take years of experience to get that. But believe in yourself. And if you believe in yourself, you'll survive.
That's great. I think that's some of the wisest advice we've heard on the SmartMarket ever. And what Materials Exchange is here to do is just what you just asked for: is stay out in front and bring people like you on our shows to talk about what's happening in the market. And look, it's busy times, right? And it's challenging times, and people have their noses down at their desks, but you got to lift your head up and look around. Otherwise, you don't know where you're headed.
Yeah.
So that's what we're here for. We're putting these shows on, 5 days a week now. We're bringing transparency to the lumber market through our digital platforms. So you know what? With that, we're going to wrap up this Friday. Bruce, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I can't thank you enough for how welcoming you've been to me personally into the framers world, and just genuine you've been with helping me understand and being able to create a product that is going to work for the framers and for the lumber industry. So with that, we can sign off. Thanks a lot, Bruce.
Thank you.
We're gonna send you your Materials Exchange mug, and
I know what I'll do with that.
Word on the street is this keeps an orange crush nice and cold on a hot summer day.
I was always glad I could introduce you to something.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bruce. Thanks everyone. We'll talk to you next week.